Hi, my name is Omar Ampersad. It's October 27, 2018, Saturday at 5:33 p.m. in Toronto. So I'm going to talk today about not being targeted. Although this is an opportunity, I'll take the opportunity to say there is no emergency here for the ongoing targeting that I am experiencing, in which people will call the cops and say, "Oh my God, she's shouting, she's doing this, she's doing that inside her home, and it's an emergency, and come and pick her up. We need her drugged." Basically, I heard. Of course, it's part of a conspiracy. Um, for people to be talking about this outside the window on an ongoing basis, it has to be a conspiracy. So this is me saying that there is no emergency. Um, there's no need to call the cops and so on, and also to confirm that the tweets that's on my Twitter account, ROSHINI 911, those are my tweets. So I said a lot of things in some of those comments with in relation to being targeted by my sister-in-law, and I stand behind them. These are suspicions, I should say, that's based on the harassment that I'm experiencing in the workplace and in my home. Enough of that. So I'm going to talk about a topic that I was listening to on the TED Talks, and maybe a lot of people out there would know about the TED Talks. You should check it out on the YouTube when you have a minute. There is very interesting topics that are discussed, and the topics are so varied. There's got to be an area of interest for just about everyone. But what's interesting about these talks are they're given by people who live on the cutting edge, thinking people, people who are evolving, and talking about lessons they've learned in their life. So this is not something that you would hear in a schoolroom, in a university lecture hall. This is a lot of it is to do with life experiences. Anyway, so I posted a link about one that talked about seeing death as a continuation of existence. And this was talked about by a doctor who saw a lot of dying people. And, and he was talking about his experiences with these people who were just about to die within weeks, and what they talked about and what they dreamed about and how they felt. And it's very interesting to me that he came up with the conclusion that that was not an ending. It was a moment of clarity and a moment of almost renewal and healing. And he wasn't sure about what happened after death, obviously, but he was talking about the process of death. So my brother passed away in May this year, and my mom passed away almost exactly 10 years before that. And these were two people who were close to me, who impacted my life. Um, their their influence, of course, is pivotal. So their depth would be the same, and it triggers a thought process about the meaning of life itself. And in the TED talk, the doctor was talking about what people remembered and what they talked about just before they died. And it was a reflection of what was important to them while they were alive. And some of it were buried, and some of it um, I guess, locked away because it was so pain. The experiences were so painful, just locked away and in thought and never brought forward and dealt with. And it was dealt with just before dying. And I have to say that I was a part of my mother's process of passing. And the topics that she chose to talk about were, just as the doctor said, things that was important to her, the people who were important to her, the people she loved the most. These were all heart-based topics. The brother she loved dearly. And she was born in Trinidad in colonial days. And in Trinidad at that time, there were estates, English estates, sugarcane estates. And my uncle, who my mother babysat, had to go work in the sugarcane fields at the age of around 5 years old. And just before she died, my mother was talking about how they would hit him with belts, sugarcane. This is a 5-year-old kid. And how he would come home crying. That was one of the things that she talked about. And she couldn't do anything to help him. And I could imagine how angry she must have felt when she saw him coming home crying. She was very, very protective of him. She also talked about an incident in which my dad hurt her, and it involved taking away an animal that she grew attached to, and taking it to the butcher without her knowledge or consent, because for whatever reason, and that hurt her, and she was talking about that before she died. And what struck me was it wasn't so much, she didn't, even though she was hurt, she didn't focus on the pain that she felt. But in the brother's case, she was focusing on the pain that he felt, and the pain she felt on their behalf. As far as the animal goes, she wanted to keep the animal, of course, and she lost the animal, so she was crying for the animal rather than for herself, even though she was hurt by what was done. It's amazing that how death brings out the emotional aspect of our lives rather than the logical side of us. It was the emotions that was taken with the person in the passing. It was, and mostly in my mother's case, love. she didn't talk about wanting to get revenge on anybody. She talked about how much she loved people and how much she loved the animal and how much they must have hurt. Um, and she wanted to do something about it. She couldn't do anything about it. These are the things that we take with us when we die. Um, and this is what struck me, because in our world, right now especially, we live in such a logical based um, intellectual environment, especially in the workplace, that, and even schools now. We are becoming roboticized, and the feelings and the emotions are being suppressed. The emotions are being put on a back burner, and what's being celebrated and what's being promoted is logical thinking. It's all about logic. It's all about being smart logically. And yet here we are in the moment of death and times just before it. It's the emotions that comes out. It's the emotions that determines how we die, in what state of mind we die in. It's not the logic. So I was listening also to one of Deepak Chopra's lectures, talks about synchronicity and the heart being the most powerful organ in the body. It generates its own electrical field and magnetic field, and the strongest electromagnetic field. In other words, it radiates out for longer distances rather than the brain. So it is the most powerful organ in our body. And it just seems like the two connected with me, and it made sense. I don't take things by word. I don't just swallow what people say. I think about it, and it has to resonate with me before I accept it as my truth. And this was something that resonated with me, and the two connected. And it's funny how I chose, of all the TED Talks, I chose this morning. I chose this one right after I heard Deepak Chopra's lecture a few days ago. Synchronicity. Heart-based existence. We have to go with our hearts rather than our heads, or else we are really going to be in a bad place if we go on just being logical about everything, because I don't think logic is the answer. We have to be heart-based in our existence, to be happy, to make other people happy, and to make a difference in the world, a positive difference in the world. Talk to you another time.